Well, we continue our romance theme here on Versus. We have 2 left to go. We had a really special one, the Gone with the Wind Casablanca battle, which was a couple of days ago. And this is actually coming out a day late because we're doing the movie reviews out on Sunday instead of on Monday. They normally run different times, so yeah. Everything's completely flipped this week. This is a Versus you wanted to do. And when we had the idea to do the romance theme, this was one that came to mind. I can honestly say I've never seen either one of these. I feel bad about saying that. The only reference I have is George Costanza on Seinfeld. Yeah. But,
So with Patton, I think.
yeah, exactly. This is a battle of Audrey Hepburn films. And let's see what happens when, that's all I'm going to say, when Breakfast at Tiffany's faces off against Robin Holiday. AJ, take it away.
That's pretty much all they have in common, really. Except she was, for a while after Roman Holiday was her first big movie. Like, before Roman Holiday, she had only been in, like, European movies and a Broadway production of Gigi, I think. So this is, like, her first actual part. And after this, obviously she won an Oscar for it and made, like, this iconic character. So from then on, she was basically typecast. The result, Holly Golightly is kind of a result of that. And so they both kind of have that same personality of wanting to be, well, yeah. Because you have the princess in Roman Holiday, who is a sophisticated woman that just wants to, or girl, really, that just wants to have fun. And Holly Golightly is someone posing as someone sophisticated who also just wants to have fun.
Fair enough.
So that's about as close as the movies themselves get. And they naturally have these. Both characters have this romance with these guys that seem a little too old for them, but that's never brought up because it doesn't matter. So we're going to start with Roman Holiday, I think. You know that story you always hear from a lot of cheesy romance movies about the that's okay. You remember the I know how they feel in movies. That's when planes fly overhead.
Yeah.
You've probably seen a lot of cheesy teen romantic comedies that involve a princess who wants to slum it and live amongst common people and do not be sophisticated or told what to do. She just wants to have fun.
Aladdin?
And she ends up meeting a commoner, and they fall in love, and then the love story ensues.
Her dad's a sultan. There's a sorcerer involved.
Well, this was basically that's an age-old story, but this was kind of the first time it was used as in the romantic comedy genre, I think.
Okay.
And it's since then, there are other movies like it. It sounds pretty precise, but there are other movies like it that exist to basically rip it off. There was another one. There's a couple of movies like this about the president's daughter, I think. So, oh my God, I remember their names: First Daughter and Chasing Liberty.
I like Chasing Liberty. It's a Mandy Moore movie.
Chasing Liberty is basically an exact rip-off of this, only she's a princess instead of the president's daughter.
Really?
So, and it is basically considered one of the ultimate romantic comedies because it's basically a perfect storm of everything, starting off with the fact that the director is William Wyler, who is the most nominated director of all time. He has like 14 director nominations, and he won like 3 or 4. I don't even know how many. Basically, William Wyler equals Oscar, and he's not to be confused with Billy Wilder, which has happened before. He normally does epics, like, I'm pretty sure he did, like, Ben-Hur. And he did, like, The Little Foxes, I think. Which isn't an epic, but you know what I mean. A romantic comedy felt an interesting direction, unless he has another movie like it, I can't remember. But anyway, the main thing that makes Roman Holiday what it is Audrey Hepburn's performance. Because she's been compared to an angel that was literally sent down from heaven and into Hollywood to give us these movies. And she's just got this presence that just... You fall in. The great thing that she was able to do with the princess and Holly Golightly is she does that rare thing where an actress's performance is so good, you're not just watching the lead actor fall in love with her, you're kind of falling in love with her with him. So she was like just perfect at that. I don't know how she did it, but she was just able to do that. She's just got this enchanting aroma around her. So, and it's just filled with like, it's one of those movies that's great because it's just filled with like these small things. I mean, it's charming throughout, and it has like these, the big moments like her not knowing how the Vespa works and driving around like mad, almost into things, and he has to chase her down because... But then there's the smaller things like these little, like these it's all, yeah, it's kind of got those... It doesn't often have a slapstick vibe to it or a like a wacky comedy vibe, but there are some of those moments like this. Gregory Peck's character lives alone. And naturally, she's been given the sedative because she's throwing a fit. But she sneaks out her window and starts to wander the streets, and then the sedative starts to kick in. So people just think she's like a homeless drunk. So she goes to sleep on this bench, and he finds her. And he tries to get her a cab ride home, but the cab driver basically won't do it. He doesn't want to get stuck with her, so Gregory Peck takes her back to his house and lets her sleep on the couch. He says, don't sleep on the bed, sleep on the couch, and I'll be back. And he comes back a couple hours later, and she's found herself in the bed. And then the sedative is so strong, she wakes up like the next afternoon. And then, obviously, Gregory Peck lives alone. He has nobody else at his apartment. And he's like, well, I'm going to send you on your way, and I guess I need to give you cab fare. So they walk outside, just as his neighbor looks over, and he sees this strange woman coming out of Gregory Peck's apartment, and he hands her money. And the neighbor has this shocked look on his face. And then there's the really small stuff, like, just like the way she blows her straw paper across the table, or, not even necessarily the moments where he's falling in love with her, just like those funny little things, like, He's a hellbent reporter, basically, when this story breaks. Because he's set to interview the princess. But naturally, he oversleeps. He doesn't even know... He's so not into his job, he doesn't know what the princess looks like. Let alone the fact that she's sleeping in his bed right now. So he misses the interview, even though she's not even there. And then when he sees a picture of her in the paper and realizes who she is, he decides he's going to make the greatest story ever. And basically take her out and show her a good time and show her amongst commoners without telling her who he is or what his job is. And he and his friend, who is a cameraman played by Eddie Albert, who also got nominated. I don't know why, but...
Oliver Douglas is an Oscar nominee? That's awesome!
2-time, too. He got nominated for the original.
I'm a big Green Acres fan, so...
And he basically plays it as a character that Chris O'Dowd would play nowadays.
Okay.
He didn't really... I mean, he's good and he's funny, but I think that Oscar nomination was riding the coattails of the fact that this movie got a total of 10 Oscar nominations, and I think he was more of a coattails nomination. But he's still funny for what it is, and they basically take her out and they're developing this story without telling her who they are. And there's something is really going down. I don't know if that's picking up on the sound of the camera.
I'm sure it is.
Hopefully. And there's this one moment where all these kids are with their teacher and they're surrounded by the fountain, and Peg doesn't have a camera on him, And this little girl has his camera around her neck, and he walks over, and he just kind of picks up, and he's like, "Hey, I'm just gonna maybe borrow this if you don't just let me." And then she's like, "Let go, it's my camera." And then they start calling the teacher.
Nice.
He's basically trying to rob this little girl of her camera, is what it comes off.
Exclusive is an exclusive, sir.
There's this funny moment where there's a lot of physical comedy that's funny in this, which is interesting from a Wyler movie, but. They're trying to get a picture of her, but Eddie Albert has this big ass camera with this big ass flash. So, and they're at this little get together at there's kind of a bar here, and she's dancing. She starts off with the long hair, and then she goes to the barber and gets the famous short haircut. And her barber asks her out. So she meets up with the barber, and they go dancing. And they're trying to get a picture of her dancing with the barber, so they go behind the bar, much to the dismay of the people back there. And they set the camera on the bar, and then Peck stands in front of it. And then just really quickly, Peck steps out of the way, they take the picture, and he steps back in front of it. They're trying to be as incognito as possible while being blatantly obvious. And then there's the famous moment with the mouth of truth, where it's basically an omen, and it's basically heavy symbolism despite being a comedic scene. It's basically the face that's built into the wall, and where its mouth is, there's a hole. And you stick your hand in it, and supposedly if you are a liar, your hand will get bitten. So they actually it's this comedic moment, and you know it's just a gimmick, like a park ride or something. But somehow the way Wyler directs this makes it suspenseful, because the music gets really dark and she sticks her hand in. You for some reason start to suspect, holy shit, what if her hand gets bitten? But of course it doesn't. And then Peck sticks his hand in and freaks her out by pretending that it's bitten. And he puts the hand in his sleeve and all that. And then they walk away and they're laughing, and we kind of linger on the mouth of truth, and it makes you realize, of course, his hand would get bitten because he's lying to her. Yeah. It's perfect symbolism. It's perfect symbolism amidst a comedic scene. That's good. The good thing about Peck in this movie that really works. Unfortunately, he wasn't nominated, which is a little surprising. But the great thing about him is he basically has to be she's basically the comedic character, and he has to be like the calm, logical one. But he's able to do it in a likable way. Like he's the normally a character like this would probably seem like cold and distant, and people would just you have to have the guy who's just kind of there and kind of trying to kill the fun that the other character is having. But he's able to be not necessarily the comedic character, but he doesn't bring it down. He's a good match he's like a good contrast is what it is that makes it work, them as a couple as a whole. And it's worth noting that it was actually in black and white movies you can never quite tell what's a fake background and what's real. The whole thing was completely shot in Rome, so all the sets and shit are all real. So that really helps the atmosphere and the epicness of the background amidst this charming romance. And the great thing about it is the movie's 2 hours. It's like an hour 58, but they're having so much fun, and you're having so much fun with them that the pacing is this does not feel like a 2-hour movie at all. It's one of those movies where you're watching it and then you're surprised when the ending comes, because it's ending already. And then there's this moment. I don't know for sure. I've never really looked into it. I don't know if this was Wyler's intention, or if this is just me giving a theory, or what it is. But I'm pretty sure this is the way it's supposed to be. The way we're supposed to think. Naturally, romantic comedies end with the two getting together and happiness forever after, all that shit. Obviously, she's got to go back to she's eventually got to go back and be the princess, because their time is running short, and she knows she has to leave eventually. And she still doesn't know who he is. So finally she gets there, and they're doing this big thing, and the princess is going to meet the press. And so she's going up to all the reporters and shaking their hands and meeting them. And towards the end of the line, she comes to Gregory Peck and Eddie Albert and realizes who they really were. And you kind of get this, you see this, at first she looks happy to see them, and then you can kind of see it sink in. And you see the disappointment sink in on her face. And then she just goes to the next person. And then they go and they take a left, and then they disappear back there. And everybody in the room leaves, and it's just Peck standing there alone in the room. And then the camera is back here, and he starts to walk towards the camera, and he's walking away. But the way that she went out, that left exit, is still in view as Peck is walking towards the camera.
Mm.
So it's like, I think we're supposed to hang on to that hope that she's going to like come running back out and run down the aisle and into his arms. And then, so he keeps walking, but then halfway down the aisle, he starts to walk in the middle of the aisle, and he blocks our view of the exit, which basically tells us she's not coming back. But then they tease us some more, and he walks a little farther this way, and the exit is back in our view. So maybe there's still a chance she could come running out of it and run down the aisle to him. So he stops, and he looks down the aisle one more time, and then he walks out. And it ends. Bummer.
Completely.
But that's not the point. The point of the movie was they had this one day together, basically. And they made everything out of it they possibly could. And that is something that they will carry with them, and that is just as romantic, if not more so, than Happily Ever After and all that.
Yep.
So, that's why a lot of people consider Roman Holiday like the quintessential romantic comedy. There's always this one. But that's Roman Holiday, so that's how it got to the legendary status of its genre that it has. Not just in its genre, but in movies in general. So it was nominated for Best Picture and Director among those other 8 nominations. And like I said, Hepburn won her only Oscar, which is kind of surprising. Probably had to do with the typecasting that role required, but now we can go on to Breakfast at Tiffany's, which has a lot of famous things about it. Obviously just the image of Audrey Hepburn in Breakfast at Tiffany's alone is an iconic image.
Yeah.
The black dress, the hat, and the cigarette. And her doing the title. She literally has this, I don't know why I used literally there. As far as where the title comes from, basically Tiffany's is her getaway, where she comes off rich and sophisticated, but she's not. So the closest she comes to luxury is being able to just hang out and window shop at Tiffany's. So she pulls up, and she has a croissant and a coffee, and just eats the croissant and drinks coffee while window shopping at Tiffany's. Because that's all she's got.
Wow.
And she lives in this apartment by herself. And what's very interesting is the fact that this movie was released in 1961. So they couldn't outright say certain things. Holly Golightly is paid to be the company of men. And that's about all they can say.
Wow. She
has men who pay her $50 to go to the powder room. That's brought up a lot.
Oh, God.
And that's all they can say. There are men constantly coming in and out of her life that just happen to bring her gifts and pay her.
Wow.
That's it. There is no term for that.
No tramp, no cheap floozy. I know I'm looking at movie dialogue from other films. Nope.
It's just like the gay friend in Adam's Rib. They just couldn't say it. He's there, but they can't just say that because it's the 1950s when that movie came out. But it's worth noting that this movie is by Blake Edwards, who is known mainly for... He had a couple of dramatic movies here and there, like Experiment in Terror, which is awesome. But he's mostly known for the Pink Panther and his slapstick movies.
Mm-hmm.
Skin Deep with John Ritter is a really good one if you can find it. And this kind of combines... This is a very good combination of elegant Blake Edwards and slapstick Blake Edwards. Because you do have those elements like with... you do have those slapstick, particularly at the party. I guess we're going to go ahead and address the elephant in the room. The scenes with Mickey Rooney also have a lot of the Edwards-esque slapstick in them. Like that bit at the beginning with him and the camera is funny. This movie has a bit of a an asterisk on its well-respected resume. Not many people enjoy the Mickey Rooney stereotype character. Obviously. He's still good. Okay. I guess it just depends where you want to... Maybe we should call Mickey Rooney persona non grata in this review, just to be safe.
Interesting.
He served his purpose back then, and it was funny, like, what's that movie called? Tea House of the August Moon, where Marlon Brando played a Chinese guy.
What?
Yeah. It's a really funny performance, but, nowadays you can't really get away with that. But, it served its purpose back then. I don't know how offensive it was considered back then, because people didn't really get offended the way they do, at least as openly back then.
And now it's reversed.
Yeah.
Her character would be pretty commonplace. His is rather offensive.
Yeah. So, and also on the opposite side of Holly Golightly getting paid to be in the company of men, we have Patricia Neal, who is I keep wanting to call her Patricia Hud. She won an Oscar for the movie Hud, so I keep wanting to think Hud's her last name, and it's fucking with my head. Patricia Neal plays I guess the right word would be a benefactor to George Papard's character, because she is married, but basically she comes over and bangs George Papard and leaves money for him when she's on her way out the door. Once again, not saying he's anything other than somebody who is given money after women sleep with him.
George Papard is a gigolo?
Just a one person, I guess, though.
He's got no clientele.
Like I said, we'll say benefactor.
Benefactor?
Yes.
Has a mysterious benefactor.
Yes, he is He is now Pip.
Yes.
Okay, So, this movie has this movie doesn't have much of a plot. Basically, the two of them are neighbors that eventually they meet because it's that age-old story where the guy keeps getting locked out of his apartment, so the girl has to let him in, and the other way around. Because they live in those buildings where you have to be buzzed in and all that shit. That were very popular in older movies. Mm-hmm. The setting for so many romance movies, those apartment buildings.
They also had doormen, too. Most of the time.
So, basically, since that's basically the plot, what you have to do is you have to kind of bring in little subplots to keep the movie going. One of those is an interesting subplot involving Buddy Ebsen. We have George Papard and Patricia Neal sitting here, and she looks out the window, and there's Buddy Ebsen leaning against a tree outside the apartment. And she says, "I think my husband might have hired him to follow us." In an interesting twist of fate, Buddy Ebsen is Holly's husband, and her name is not Holly. She, her name is Lula May. And she basically ran away from him and their 4 children. Their 4 children that I think aren't legitimately hers. Because I don't know if this was appropriate back then or what the story with this is nowadays, but we're supposed to Audrey Hepburn was in her 30s. Holly Golightly is supposed to be 19. Which you can kind of tell because she does have that naivete about her, and she had this youthful look about her for a long time. We're supposed to assume that Buddy Ebsen's character married her when she was pushing 14. I guess that's the way that worked then. I don't know. But anyway, she ran away and abandoned them and took on this persona of Holly, who is this phony, sophisticated character who Martin Balsam is her... she works for him in some... I don't remember exactly what his purpose was. It's been a while, but... they're at the party at the beginning of the movie, and Martin Balsam says... it's really funny. I think they did this on purpose. They had to have. George Peppard meets Martin Balsam, and Martin Balsam says, "So, is she or isn't she?" Immediately, your thought is saying, "Is Martin Balsam calling out that she's a prostitute?" But then, when Peppard asks him to elaborate, he says, "Is she or isn't she a phony?" And of course, she's doing this fake, sophisticated persona. Because she just likes the idea of living that life. But she's really practically broke and living in this apartment, and just happens to have rich friends that come over. That's it. That's all she is. That's all she's worth. Literally the only thing she lives with is her cat that she did. It's not even hers. She said she was down by the river one day and they became friends, so she just brought him home. And because the cat doesn't belong to her, she just named it Cat. She doesn't feel like giving it a name. So they're just buddies who live in this apartment together. And he's not technically hers, I guess. It's worth noting that she is obviously amazing in this movie. I think this is my favorite performance of hers, even over Roman Holiday. And she was rightfully nominated for it, even though she lost Sophia Loren, which I don't agree with. I didn't think much of Two Women as a movie, but whatever. Shit happens. Leslie Caron was nominated that year also for Lily, which is also... No, that was 53. My mistake. Fuck it. I can't fucking know everything, even though I think I do.
It means you know grilling that stuff right now.
Yeah. Hepburn just has this quality about her that was perfect for this character. Truman Capote, it's based off the novella that Truman Capote wrote. Mm. And Capote pictured her as Marilyn Monroe. But in all honesty, even though that probably would have worked to an extent, it's really, really hard to imagine Holly Golightly not as Audrey Hepburn. And it's just all those... She just brings so many perfect things to it. When she's sitting outside the window singing Moon River, which won the Oscar for Best Original Song, of course. Which comes back later when you realize that Peppard's character is subtly falling in love with her because they kind of still keep a distance, but he'll wander through the apartment building whistling Moon River while he looks through his mail. She does an interesting thing about how she's somebody else brought this to my attention, but it makes perfect sense. Audrey Hepburn in this movie is so perfect that she is has this radiance no matter what she's wearing. She has that iconic radiance when she's in the black dress and the hat with the cigarette holder. But there's one scene where she's in a dress that she made out of a sheet, and a lot of the times she's just wearing this tattered shirt that she wears to bed, but she just constantly looks like one of the most beautiful things you've ever seen. Just at all times, no matter what the scenario. And probably only her could pull that off. And she has this, and she brings that, charming likability that she had in Roman Holiday that she kind of got typecast into this, especially the scene where she's drunk and he's carrying her home, and she's talking in the third person, and she says, she's talking about the phrase, every Tom, Dick, and Harry, but then she says, oh no, Harry was his friend, it's every Tom, Dick, and Sid. I don't know. We get into that, and it's in mid conversation when the scene starts, so we don't know where that conversation was and when it started. And there's a subplot where she's thinking she wants to marry Rusty Trawler, and Rusty Trawler is this fat rich guy with like yellow hair, not blonde hair, like butter yellow hair and glasses. Because he's rich. But of course he marries somebody else, and she's still broke, and you know she didn't love him, and she's not heartbroken. She's just broke still. And they get into this discussion about how she says, "I was just going to marry him for the money. Wouldn't if I was rich, wouldn't you marry me just for the money and stuff like that?" He says yes, but I think we know how he really feels. So, lastly, I think I am sorry, The Notebook. But you do not have the quintessential kiss in the rain scene. The best kiss in the rain scene of all time is the ending where she gets out of the car and Kat is missing, and she is desperately running around in the rain in this alley looking for Kat, and she can't find him anywhere. And then you hear him meowing, and he's hiding in a box. And she picks him up, and she hides him in her coat, and she runs back to the car, and he's standing there. And with the cat in between them, they have this big kiss in the rain, and that takes us right into the ending. Yeah. The Notebook is a great movie, but nothing even comes close to that scene as far as romantic kisses in the rain. I'm sorry, The Notebook, you didn't even come close.
I like Jason Amy myself.
The Notebook is second, but it's a huge distant second. This scene is just... If you have just the slightest romantic bone in your body, the ending of Breakfast at Tiffany's will just make your heart grow wings and fly away.
They're all sitting on they're sitting on the guy's couch, and everybody's crying.
Yeah. So, just, yeah. It's also one of those moments where you think the great romances are when they don't end up together, like Roman Holiday or Casablanca, for instance. But sometimes when they do get together, even if you're just this bitter, cold-hearted person, sometimes, no matter how bitter you are, you still just want to see them get together, and it's just this amazing... It's probably the most romantic scene for me in movie history. That's just me, though. So, of these two, personally, I prefer Breakfast at Tiffany's. I think it's just one of the quintessential romance movies ever. It's probably my favorite romance movie. Yeah. That's like strictly romantic. Like, there's Titanic, which is a masterpiece. But
yeah.
Movies that are strictly romance, I think Breakfast at Tiffany's is as good as it gets. So, that's it.
All right, so romance-themed Versus will have its finale next week. It's going to take one of my favorite movies of all time and put it up against another Oscar winner as well. So, any parting words for this Versus?
That's